Do we have a microphone for him for all?
We did not set up a microphone, so
We should note with profit that in the first three chapters of the second canto, the gradual process of development of devotional service is being presented. In the first chapter, the first step in devotional service for God consciousness by the process of hearing and chanting has been stressed, and a gross conception of the personality of Godhead in his universal form for the beginners is recommended. By such a gross conception of God through the material manifestations of his energy, one is enabled to spiritualize the mind and the senses and gradually concentrate the mind upon Lord Vishnu, the Supreme, who is presented as the Super Soul in every heart and everywhere, in every atom of the material universe. The system of Panch Upasana recommended 5 mental attitudes for the common man is also enacted for this purpose, namely gradual development, worship of the superior that may be in the form of fire, electricity, the sun, the mass of living beings, Lord Shiva, and at last the impersonal super soul, the partial representation of Lord Vishnu. They are all nicely described in the second chapter. But in the third chapter, further development is prescribed after one has actually reached the stage of Vishnu worship or pure devotional service. And the mature stage of Vishnu worship is suggested here in relation to the change of heart.
Well, I'll read further. The whole process of spiritual culture is aimed at changing the heart of the living being in the matter of his eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord as subordinate servant, which is his eternal constitutional position. So, with the progress of devotional service, the reaction of change in the heart is exhibited by gradual detachment from the sense of material enjoyment by a false sense of lording it over the world, and an increase in the attitude of rendering loving service to the Lord. Vidhi Bhakti, or regulated devotional service, by the limbs of the body, namely the eyes, the ears, the nose, the hands, and the legs, as already explained herein before, is now stressed herein in relation to the mind, which is the impetus for all activities of the limbs of the body. It is expected by all means that by discharging regulated devotional service, one must manifest the change of heart. If there is no such change, the heart must be considered steel framed, for it is not melted even when there is chanting of the holy name of the Lord. We must always remember that hearing and chanting are the basic principles of discharging devotional duties, and if they are properly performed, there will follow the reactional ecstasy with signs of tears in the eyes and standing of the hairs on the body. These are natural consequences and the preliminary symptoms of the bhava stage, which occurs before one reaches the perfectional stage of prema, or love of Godhead. I'll read this again. We must always remember that hearing and chanting are the basic principles of discharging devotional duties. And if they are properly performed, they will follow the reactional ecstasy with signs of tears in the eyes and standing of the hairs on the body. These are natural consequences and are the preliminary symptoms of bhava stage, which occurs before one reaches the perfectional stage of prema, love of Godhead. You guys remember reading in chemistry class or something, preliminary, the word preliminary?
Yes.
It is like a precursor. It is the basic. Let me see what the word means actually. It's very interesting.
Primary.
That something that comes before the main event. So it's not the primary thing itself. It is preliminary. Pre means
Comes
before.
prior.
Huh?
Comes prior.
Prior, yes. You're right. To the main event itself. So here Prabhupada is mentioning in the purport that the ecstasy with signs of tears in the eyes and standing of the hairs on the body, they are natural consequences and are preliminary symptoms of the bhava stage. Like he's talking about, that's just the starting of the bhava stage. For many of the devotees, of course, who even supposed to be chanting for years, it doesn't come across, and it is said to be even a preliminary, not even a perfectional stage of bhava. And he explains further why. If the reaction does not take place, even after continuous hearing and chanting of the holy name of the Lord, it may be considered to be due to offenses only. Offenses are the only reasons that even these preliminary symptoms may not show up. That is the opinion of the Sandarbha. In the beginning of chanting of the holy name of the Lord, if the devotee has not been very careful about evading the 10 kinds of offenses at the feet of the holy name, certainly the reaction of feelings of separation will not be visible by tears in the eyes and standing of the hair on end. The bhava stage is manifested by 8 transcendental symptoms, namely inertness, perspiration, standing of hairs on end, failing in the voice, trembling, paleness of the body, tears in the eyes, and finally, trance. These are the 8 transcendental symptoms, or also called Ashtasattvic Vikars. The Nectar of Devotion, a summary study of Srila Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Siddhu, explains those symptoms and vividly describes other transcendental developments, both in steady and accelerating manifestations. We'll actually look at it, what this paragraph means. It's really interesting. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has very critically discussed all these bhava displays in connection with some unscrupulous neophytes imitating the above symptoms for cheap appreciation. Not only Vishwanath Chakravarti, but also Srila Rupa Goswami treated them very critically. Sometimes all the above 8 symptoms of ecstasy are imitated by the mundane devotee, Prakrit Sahajiyas. But the pseudo symptoms are at once detected when one sees the pseudo devotee addicted to so many forbidden things. Even though decorated with the signs of a devotee, a person addicted to smoking, drinking, or illegitimate sex with women cannot have all the above mentioned ecstatic symptoms. Now, the next line is really interesting. But it is seen that sometimes these symptoms are willfully imitated, and for this reason, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti accuses the imitators of being stone-hearted men. They are sometimes even affected by the reflection of such transcendental symptoms. Yet, if they still not give up the forbidden habits, then they are hopeless cases for the transcendental realizations. I don't know if you've been able to pay attention to what is being said here, but it is very surprising because Prabhupada is saying that, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, that sometimes even affected by the reflection of such transcendental symptoms. So he's saying that Prakrita Sahajiyas who try to imitate these symptoms, sometimes just by the reflection or the imitation of them, also they may start to become affected. So the symptoms of ecstatic love or bhava are so powerful, and we'll look at it in a little bit of a detail from Nectar of Devotion. The mere symptoms themselves, to someone who's just faking it, can begin to transform them. It is so powerful. But of course, they do not give up usually on the forbidden habits, illegitimate habits, and therefore it becomes a hopeless case. So it is obviously not encouraged for all of us to start faking these symptoms, because the true measure of whether or not the sadhana is working is something else. It's not really the symptoms necessarily, and we'll look at it in a bit. It is also interesting for us to note, I wish I could highlight that line, but it is seen, but it is seen that sometimes these symptoms are willfully imitated. For this reason, he accuses the imitator of being stone-hearted men. So we actually looked at in the beginning of the purport and the translations that if the tears of love are not flowing from your eyes, if you're not, which are preliminary symptoms, that means you're a stone-hearted person. And here, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur Maharaj is saying that these imitators are stone-hearted men. So basically, do you see a little parallel? Is that even if one is not consciously imitating these things, which anyone must not in any circumstances, these symptoms, still if they're not progressing on the path, they are on the same platform as these imitators. or the Sahajiyas, which is a little harsh statement, because one can think like, I'm doing all the process of Vaidhi Bhakti perfectly. How can you put me on the level of Sahajiyas? Well, in terms of commitments, it certainly is not the same thing. But in terms of the progress of the heart, if it is still attached to the material things, even if one is, while they're still performing the Vaidhi Bhakti, they're still considered stone-hearted. So it's the similar platform as even imitators. And who are imitators? People who lie, who deceit. So on that level, one is considered to be, unless they progress to bhava. I'll read further. When Lord Chaitanya met Ramanand Roy of Kavur on the banks of Godavari, the Lord developed all these symptoms. So Lord Chaitanya developed these ecstatic symptoms. But because of the presence of some non-devotee brahmanas who were attendants of the Raya, the Lord suppressed these symptoms. So sometimes they are not visible even in the body of the first-class devotee for certain circumstantial reasons. Therefore, real, steady bhava is definitely displayed in the matter of cessation of material desires, or shanti. Utilization of every moment in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Avyayartha, kalatvam. Eagerness for glorifying the Lord constantly. Namagane shadaruchi. Attraction for living in the land of the Lord. Priti stad vashati sthale. Complete detachment from material happiness, virakti, and pridelessness. Man shunyata. One who has developed all these transcendental qualities is really possessed of the bhava stage, as distinguished from the stone-hearted imitator or mundane devotee. So here Prabhupada has revealed, how many are these? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 symptoms which are to be treated as signs for a steady bhava stage. Actually, there are 9 symptoms in total in Nectar that Srila Rupa Goswami originally demonstrates, but for the better sake of understanding, Prabhupada has condensed them to 6 right now. Okay, I read further. The whole process can be summarized as follows. The advanced devotee who chants the holy name of the Lord in a perfectly offenseless manner and is friendly to everyone can actually relish the transcendental taste of glorifying the Lord. And the result of such realization is reflected in the cessation of all material desires, etc., as mentioned above. The neophytes, due to their being in the lower stage of devotional service, are invariably envious. So much so that they invent their own ways and means of devotional regulations without following the acharyas. So they try to do their own things. As such, even if they make a show of constantly chanting the holy name of the Lord, they cannot relish the transcendental taste of the holy name. Therefore, the show of tears in the eyes, trembling, perspiration, unconsciousness, etc., is condemned. They can, however, get in touch with the pure devotee of the Lord and rectify their bad habits, otherwise they shall continue to be stone-hearted and unfit for any treatment. A complete progressive march on the return path home, back to Godhead, will depend on the instructions of the revealed scriptures directed by a realized devotee. Okay, that's a very heavy purport. Quite a few things are being talked about. I want to focus on a few things. First of all, in the translation, it is mentioned that one whose chanting is basically not even resulting in symptoms such as tears in the eyes, trembling of the body, etc., etc., then they are stone-hearted. Right? So if the chanting is not happening offense-less, then this is the only reason perhaps these symptoms won't develop, and one is said to be stone-hearted. Now this word heart is what I want to focus on more today, because there's a certain word which appears in Bhagavatam quite a few times. It captures my attention a lot because from my history or past in the Eightfold Path of Yoga, which is only a progression to Bhakti, also are similar terms used. So it has always intrigued me, like how come Bhagavatam knows about these things, which according to my understanding was only about Bhakti. Because there is a common conception in the world out there, an extremely wrong conception. I realized more so after going through Nectar of Devotion for this class. is that bhakti is purely emotion or baseless emotions, or that there is no technicality to it or science to it, for the lack of a better word. But whatever that I realized and studied and heard from those who consider themselves to be the master of technicalities, the people of the yoga path, everything is mentioned in Bhagavatam and on perfect logic. Nothing goes even an inch away from the truth. And not only that, it is only a starting point from where bhakti begins. So there's a word called Hridaya Granthi. It features in different parts of Bhagavatam. It was also present in the second canto we read the other day. And I've always thought about, like, what does it really mean? And I've asked these questions to a few people. I also asked this to my spiritual master, actually, and I got such a good answer because I noticed his understanding to be very much aligned with the Yoga Shastras. And I noticed that the answer is also found in Bhagavatam at a few places, but particularly in the chapter which he recommends for us to learn us from. What is that called, Sarthak? Divinity and Divinity and Divine Service. So that's where the verse goes back to. Tayor mitto hridaya granthim ahu. 1. Yada mano hridaya granthi rashya. 2. Karma shayam hridaya granthi bandham. 3rd. These are 3 verses. Bhidyate hridaya granthis chidyante sarva samshaya. 4th. The counting right. 4th, I guess. What else? Ya ashu hridaya granthim, and so on and so forth. So many, there are countless. There's another one. Not only that, in Padyavali, which is by Srila Rupa Goswami, this is brought up again. So when I found a mention again, I was like, I have to get into more of this Hridaya Granthi. Because in the Yoga Shastras, you know what exactly we're talking about? You know what is a Granthi? What does it mean?
In Tamil?
Not. That is the literal translation. If you've studied anatomy of the muscles, if a muscle is said to be hurt while in exercise, it is said to have, what are those words that they use? Bruises. There are also muscle knots. And if you take piece of fabrics, you tie them together, and then you untie it, you'll notice some strains. And sometimes the knot is so tight that you can't even untie it. So that is what this is about, a knot in the heart, Hridaya Granthi. This is a very key element actually, because Bhagavatam describes this knot in the heart to be the very basis for our entanglement in the material world and why we're not in the spiritual world. Because we have a knot in our heart. Now going back to in fact, the Yoga Shastras go so much into the detail. They mention about multiple knots that are there. In fact, the whole process of, I don't want to use such words, but opening of the chakras, so to speak, is to basically unknot these little pranic knots which are developed all throughout the subtle body of the pranic system. But 3 being more prominent: Brahma Granthi, Vishnu Granthi, Rudra Granthi. I remember these things. And then Bhagavatam especially focuses a lot on the Vishnu Granthi, or the knot in the heart, because that is the seat of love, unconditional love. And unless one is able to untie that knot, which is not really possible, because if a knot has been tied from 1 or 2 years, you cannot untie it even, or even a few days. But if a knot has been tied for trillions and trillions and trillions of lifetimes, how can you untie that knot? Then you only have to cut it. You know, sometimes you tie some bags and you have to cut the knot. So it's called Granthi Bhedan, or piercing the knot, even in the Yoga Shastras and so in the Bhagavatam. So it describes the how is the Granthi Bhed. I'm mixing 2 languages right now. How do you do the Granthi Bhedan? Don't try to speak on those terms, because these are not bhakti terms. And so they're preliminary. But Srila Rupa Swami in Padyavali mentions beautifully, and I think this is a quotation from Nectar of Devotion. In this place, the son of Maharaj Nand used to live with his father, who was the king of all cowherd men. In this place, Lord Krishna broke the cord in which Saktasura demon was concealed. At this place, Damodar, who can cut the knot of our material existence, was tied up by his mother Yashoda. So, how to cut the knot of the heart is also demonstrated in the same verse exact. The reference is of Damodar Leela, Mother Yashoda. Whatever she did there is exactly what's needed to cut the knot of the heart. The way that she was constantly just focused on Krishna and nothing else and no one else when she was chasing him. That is essentially, to understand it simply in a few lines, that is the entire process of Granthi Bhedan, which the whole Bhagavatam is expanding upon. And the entire purpose of Bhagavatam is to cut the knot in the heart so we're able to get to back home to Godhead. But just the Leela itself that Mother Yashoda performs with Krishna gives away the answer. And how poetically that the knot itself also comes into the word knot also comes into the Leela. So I'm just surprised by how poetic things are here right now. So how many of you, this is on a little personal note, how many of you, if you felt things like, this should be a little common for those people in bhakti, sometimes when emotions overpower, there's a certain heaviness in the heart or in the chest region. Or one may feel like they cannot breathe, or they need to even expand the chest out or something, or it becomes so heavy. Some people may even experience burning sensations in the heart, right? A lot of people outside of bhakti don't experience these things because there's something to do with the Hridaya Granthi, the place which, if the knot is cut, you can enter into the world of unconditional love. Have you experienced such things? Now there are things which could be done, like circulating the vital force around the region better through pranayama, stretching of the body through asanas, which really help us to regulate the vital force in the region so you don't feel so much of heaviness in the region. But that is a relief, and reliefs are important, if it's a long journey especially. But the ultimate relief is, and I've noticed this, is attentive chanting. Trust me, hours and hours of regulating the prana in the heart region to soothe the burning in the heart. Just a round of attending chanting, offenseless. That's how powerful. Of course, all the strength is coming from the name, and the nami are not different. So that is the ultimate thing about cutting the knot of the heart. Now, also further in the purport, Srila Prabhupada, which is a little unlike so far in the purports we've read in the first and second canto, I think he's already starting to get into the details because he's revealing different signs of steadiness into bhava. So he's directly getting into Nectar of Devotion right now. So in the Nectar of Devotion, which is a commentary or a summary of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by Srila Rupa Goswami, it's also called Rasacharya in our tradition. I'm very surprised by how technical it is because there are mellows or rasas mentioned. Not only that, there's a classification of direct rasas, and we know these things, that you can relate to Krishna in Shantya affection, paternal affection, conjugal way. So there are direct mellows, but there are indirect mellows mentioned. Maybe some of you are already aware of these things. Some of them are laughing. I had them in my notes. Yahasya, Adbhuta, Veera, Karuna, Raudra, Bhayanaka, Vibhatsha. So there are secondary 7 rasas mentioned, adding up to the 5 primary rasas. Not only that, towards the end of the book, Srila Rupa Goswami also talks about mixing of rasas. It is so scientific. My head was blown away when I was reading it. He was talking about, and he is getting into the pranic level, exactly how yogis speak. He's talking about when the vital life force or prana interacts with the fire element, it produces a certain kind of rasa. And with the air element, it produces another kind of rasa. I'm like, that's so correct and that's so technical. People think bhakti is just about changing clothes and sitting in a temple and ringing a bell, which is also beautiful. But even many scientists don't have such a deep level of understanding of their own body, forget about this material world. So he's getting into the science and technicalities of rasas. there, I want to share something that I found this interesting, which is why and is related to the purport, so I'm sharing it. Hasya rasa, which is one of the indirect. By the way, Srila Rupa Goswami also talks about compatible and incompatible rasas. So, if someone is in a, for example, Madhurya rasa, which is in conjugal love, they're experiencing that in relationship with Krishna, then there is no space for. So there is a space for Raudra secondary rasa there also, because you get angry. I mean, Radharani gets transcendently angry from Krishna. It's called mana. But there is no space for bhibatsha, which is disgust, because there is no room of disgust in that rasa. So how different secondary rasas can be combined with 5 primary rasas. And then we can have further and further subcategories of rasas and rasas and rasas, like a whole beautiful plate or a salad of all these many different components. I was really surprised. So Hasya Rasa I found this very interesting. There are further 6 categories within Hasya Rasa. So we're talking about 5 primary, 7 secondary. Within 7 secondary is Hasya. Within Hasya, there are 6 further classifications. So technical. First is called Smita, or gentle smile. The signs are the teeth are not visible, and change is noticed especially in the eyes and the cheeks. An example is given when Krishna is caught stealing yogurt and seeks the shelter of Balaram. Then the sages smile at the sweetness of the Supreme Lord, who's behaving like a frightened child. So that is Smita, one type of Hasya Rasa. Then there's Hasita, which is slightly fuller smile. And a sign is that the small portion of the teeth become visible. The expression is still controlled. An example is when Krishna disguises himself as Abhimanyu in Mahabharata and creates a humorous situation involving, not Abhimanyu from Mahabharata, but this Abhimanyu, and Prabhupada described him as the so-called husband of Radharani, Abhimanyu. There's a humorous situation involving Jatila, who is Radharani's then so-called mother-in-law. And the friends understand this trick, and they smile, showing a little bit of teeth. Then there's Vihasita, which is broader laughter. The teeth are clearly visible, and amusement is more pronounced. When Jatila pretends to sleep while Krishna is nearby, her amusement becomes difficult to conceal, and her teeth become visible. Then there's Avahasita, which is stronger facial laughter. Here the nose expands and puffs, and the eyes become narrower and they squint. Here there's a mention of Mother Yashoda, who questions Krishna about the pastimes of Krishna, and a gopi who understands the whole situation, like how Mother Yashoda doesn't understand that he is God. Then she is demonstrating this avahasita. So that is one of the laughter symptoms also. It could be categorized because it's natural and spontaneous. So devotees can demonstrate all of these things. And one might say that, can we think of ourselves to demonstrate such high level of symptoms of ecstasy? Ideally not. But I read something beautiful from Srila Gaur Govind Swami Maharaj yesterday, that and someone was asking him, I was reading this conversation, that it is said that if you read the rasa pastimes of Krishna, then your attachment to lust will be removed. But it is also said that a new devotee should not read rasa pastimes and advanced pastimes. So why do they have to struggle with their lusty attachments until they become senior? And if they won't even become senior because they're struggling with that little thing, then so it's a self-defeating purpose. So then Gaur Govind Swami Maharaj explains that Prabhupada is actually saying that one should not read these advanced pastimes by themselves, because then their mind will think of lusty things. But to hear it from a pure devotee is allowed and recommended. In fact, that is the only way of getting over this. So he clarifies, and he say, so basically, essentially Gaur Govind Maharaj is not making these things which are the topmost to be inaccessible from us. So these things can also manifest if Krishna is willing. And we can read about these, not read alone about these things. He clearly mentions that reading about it ourselves is dangerous. But hearing from advanced devotees, yes, it is recommended. Anyway, so next one is apahasita, or laughter with bodily agitation. The tears appear and shoulders shake. The whole body begins to precipitate. Narad Muni sees the child Krishna dancing according to some singing, and the Supreme Controller lets himself be controlled. Then Narada laughs and dances. His shoulders start trembling. The last subcategory of laughter rasa is ati hasita, or intense overflowing laughter. The signs are that loud laughter, clapping, and sometimes jumping or strong bodily movements also happen. Yeah, there is some mention of gopis bursting into loud laughter, and Krishna and some other gopis exchange some humorous remarks. I was really surprised by this classification, so I wanted to share with you all. And this is more like an encouragement to also explore nectar of devotion for when you're ready in your reading, because I am a technical person, but more emotional than technical. So I was here and there struggling with the same things being repeated over and over, which is very important. That's the preliminary thing. But I found some solace in knowing that so many things about mellows are mentioned, because people also criticize ISKCON by saying that there's not enough mention about these mellows in Prabhupada's writings. You read a nectar of devotion, then we'll talk. Anyway, one beautiful thing to notice from all this is that how so much of attention is paid to little details. In the subcategories of laughter, you'll notice one is with slight smile, one is with teeth slightly visible, another one is teeth a little more visible. One would think like, what is the big deal? But if we actually read Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bhagavatam, and different pastimes that acharyas have accounted for, I used to wonder that why is so much attention being paid to the details? Krishna moved his left hand with peacock feather in it. This is a made up one, for example. And his thumb moved an inch. And I was like, maybe you love him a lot, so I understand you're paying details, but you're accounting every little thing. So it makes sense, because there is a difference. There is a difference. If a devotee is smiling in the Leela, demonstrating that ecstatic symptom, but if the teeth is visible or not, it shows what level of bhava are they displaying and demonstrating. And that in combination with some other rasa, what effect is that producing, and what relationship the devotee has with Krishna? It's giving away a lot of information, which is why all the encounter pastimes are so specific to the dot. Hare Krishna, Jai Shri Prabhu. So, yeah, this was something that I realized reading this. Now going back to the purport, measuring our progress, because I just mentioned how these symptoms can also show up in devotees. Rahul Prabhu laughed like instantly. So should we look at these symptoms or not? Should we try to notice them in us or not? Should we try to imitate them or not? Obviously not. Already answered. But Prabhupada gives us a safe passage. Actually, Rupa Goswami himself gives us 9 ways to check ourselves. So how steady are we on the level of bhava or on the way to bhava? Prabhupada reduces it to further 6 for ease of understanding. Shanti, avyartha kalatvam, namagane sadaruchi, priti stadvashati sthale, virakti, and manashunyata. We just read it in the purport. Says cessation of material desires, not wasting time, having each moment being utilized in loving devotion service. That's a big sign that we can try to judge our progress on. Sustain eagerness for glorifying Lord's name. You know, we were just, when His Grace Vaisheshika Prabhu was here, over breakfast, he was constantly, oh, this curry is like that, was just like how Mahaprabhu did this. And I was like, he's so obsessed with Krishna and Mahaprabhu, because it naturally flows in pure devotees. It's like there is so much eagerness that they don't want to waste a single moment without glorifying Lord's name and Leela and the form. Then also there is an attraction for places connected with the Lord. You're all living in a dham, so you're definitely attracted to the space. Otherwise, why would you move into? Sometimes we forget. It's not easy to end your existing lease or whatever, to give a notice at your place, to say goodbye to your friends, move into a new place with strange set of people, sharing room with them, sharing a bathroom with so many people, men's ashram, ladies also. But I'm saying is all these are difficult things. Now we're living it, so we think that, but ask a random person to do all that one day, all of nowhere. It's impossible, right? So there is certainly an attraction for places connected with the Lord, which is why we're here. So that is a good parameter you can judge yourself on, that there's a green tick. Virakti, which is detachment from material happiness. And there's a pridelessness or demand An absence of demands for prestige, manashunyata. So Prabhupada in this purport gives these 6 safe parameters to judge yourself from, and not from how much tears are coming out or something. Because there's some problem with this ashta vikaras. The problem is, in Srila Rupa Goswami mentions, is that someone who's so much of a beginner can also demonstrate these, especially in the company of a pure devotee. We have His Holiness Bhakti Swami Maharaj here, and so many devotees visit from around the world. There's name being chanted. This place is maintained in a certain way. So someone can shed a tear in kirtan and can experience some bliss during japa, and one might think that they're progressing, and that could be true, and it would be true. I have faith in all of you and me. but okay. But what I'm saying is that this is not safe, because Srila Rupa Goswami calls it dry symptoms or something. That it may still be exhibiting, but they're dry. They don't have enough real core juice in it. It's not a real thing. Not yet, at least. So one must not pay attention to it and pay to the safer ones which were just demonstrated. There is another example mentioned in the purport, and I would like to read about it because it's beautiful. Of a pastime of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he met Ramananda Roy for the first time. Ramananda Roy? Yeah. Ramananda Roy is actually, which one? Vishaka Sakhi? Vishaka Sakhi. So of course, because Mahaprabhu is also Radharani. It's Radha Krishna joint combination. So if she is meaning Vishaka Sakhi, then obviously the emotions have to come out. So Mahaprabhu instantly demonstrates these ecstatic symptoms, both Ramananda Roy and Mahaprabhu. And they begin to tremble, they're shedding tears, they're hugging each other, they're embracing each other. In the Leela, Ramananda Roy belongs to socially what is called the lower class. So he's even saying that you're a sannyasi Mahaprabhu. You can't even touch a lower class. No one can touch a lower class person, and you're embracing me like that. He's crying and he's saying these things out of love. And Mahaprabhu is just practically saying, just shut up. And he's hugging me and I'm crying. But as soon as Mahaprabhu notices, of course he knows it already because he knows everything, but for Leela, as soon as he notices that there are other Brahmanas who are accompanying Ramananda Roy and who are not favorable to bhakti, these are samartha kind of Brahmanas, ritualistic and karmakandis. So he chooses to hide his symptoms instantly. And there are other mentions in different Leelas which will clearly demonstrate that relying on ecstatic symptoms is not a way to judge one's spiritual growth. Because many of you journal, I hope you do regularly. There one notes these things, and they should note these things. On this and that day, a tear flew from my eyes in kirtan, or experienced this, or this happened, or that happened. When one must know that the real parameters which Srila Prabhupada just gave us in the purport, our reflection and journaling should be around that, even more if not the same. Okay, do I still have a taste for material things? Am I still looking for my own sense gratification? Right? So, Mahaprabhu himself and many prominent devotees, they choose to hide their ecstatic symptoms. They rarely display it because they know devotees will get a wrong message, that this is the advancement while it is so much not. In fact, even those 6 symptoms that Prabhupada has given, our acharyas say they could be further condensed into just 2 broad symptoms of advancement in spiritual growth and bhakti. One is that one loses taste for material enjoyment, and one is that one has more and more taste for hearing chanting, or basically things related to Krishna. Okay, so we'll read a little bit about this and then we'll close because we're already at time and we started late too. Finally, after some days, the Lord arrived at the bank of river Godavari, which reminded him of the river Yamuna. And by seeing the forest there, he remembered Sri Vrindavan Dham. After performing his usual chanting and dancing for some time in the forest, the Lord crossed the river and took his bath on the other side. After that, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu walked a little way from the bathing ghat and sat down to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. At this time, Ramananda Roy came there upon a palanquin in order to bathe in the river, and many brahmanas and musicians accompanied him. After bathing, Ramananda Roy offered oblations to the forefathers according to the Vedic rituals. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could immediately understand Ramananda Roy's identity, and his desire to meet him was so great that his mind began swiftly running after him. The Lord patiently remained seated, however, and when Ramananda Roy saw the wonderful sannyasi, he came to meet him. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared to Ramananda Roy to be as brilliant as 100 suns. His saffron-clad body was large and was very strongly built. His eyes were like lotus petals. Indeed, Ramananda Roy was struck with wonder upon seeing the Lord, and so he immediately went and offered his obeisances by falling down flat like a stick. The Lord then stood up and said, "Please rise and chant the holy name of Krishna." "Are you Ramananda Roy?" Actually, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very eager to embrace Ramananda Roy, who then replied, "Yes, I am your very lowly servant and I belong to the Shudra community." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced Ramananda Roy very firmly, and at that time both master and servant became merged in the ocean of ecstatic love. Since Ramananda Roy is an incarnation of the Gopi Vishakha, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself, the natural love for one another was awakened. All of the ecstatic symptoms appeared in their bodies, such as paralysis, perspiration, tears, shivering, palpitations, and paleness. And as the word Krishna came falteringly from their mouths, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Roy almost lost consciousness and fell to the ground. When the stereotyped ritualistic brahmanas saw this manifestation of ecstatic love, they were astonished. They thought, "This sannyasi has a luster just like the effulgence of Brahman. How is it that he is crying upon embracing a mere Shudra?" Ramananda Roy is the governor of Madras and a very learned and grave personality. How is it that by touching this sannyasi, he has become restless and just like a madman? While the Brahmanas were speculating in this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw them and so restrained himself from displaying further ecstatic emotions. After pacifying themselves when they sat down together, Mahaprabhu smilingly addressed Ramananda as follows: "Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya spoke very highly of your good qualities and made a great endeavor to convince me to meet you. Indeed, since I have come here to simply see you, it is very good that even without even making an effort, I have been able to meet you here." And there's a whole conversation happening between Ramananda Roy and Mahaprabhu. It will take too long, but I just want to share about what's happening is that Lord asks him questions after question about, okay, tell me something about bhakti, basically devotional service. Ramananda Roy gives an explanation, and he's like, very good, but go deeper. And then he gives an answer. He's like, very good, but go deeper, even deeper, to the point, I really wish I had made notes here. This is in between, so one response after another. Now, Ramananda Roy said that to give one's occupational duties within the Varnashrama system and accept the renounced order of life is the essence of perfection. That also, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that, okay, this is good, but still not give enough. Give me a deeper understanding. Just so you all know, it came to a point, I can't find it, but where even Mahaprabhu said that, what is this Varnashrama thing you're talking about? I understand, but this is not bhakti. Give me something deeper. Of course, Varnashrama system is supported, but he's clearly saying this is not it. And then he even says, one who thus attains the transcendental platform at once realizes the supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never hankers nor laments, equally disposed toward all living beings. In this state, he attains pure devotional to Krishna. Mahaprabhu still says, very good. This is also external, but please say something more. Then he says, pure devotional service without a tinge of speculative knowledge. That is perfection. And he quotes Srimad Bhagavatam. My dear Lord, who have abandoned all endeavors to acquire knowledge, who, in order to hear from self-realized devotees by a holy name, form pastimes, can remain in any state of varna or ashrama. So he says all these things which are very advanced. Still Mahaprabhu says that all this, and I quote, this is all right, but you can say something more on the subject. So he's not stopping. So you'll be surprised that, I just want to get to the end of it all. I don't want to use my own words, but Ramananda Roy replied, until this day I did not know anyone within the material world who could inquire beyond this perfect stage of devotional service, because all bhakti pretty much ends here and you do everything for Krishna. Among all, then Ramananda Roy says, okay, finally, he's giving up and he's revealing. furthermore, that among of all the gopis, the love of Srimati Radharani for Krishna is the topmost. In Srimad Bhagavatam, the other gopis admit the superiority of Srimati Radharani as follows. My dear gopis, the gopis who has been taken away by Krishna to a secluded place must have worshipped him more than anyone else. Then Mahaprabhu said, okay, now you're talking something. Please speak on. I'm very happy to hear you because a river of unprecedented nectar is flowing through your mouth. So Mahaprabhu here is not even willing to listen to the very perfection through Gita and Bhagavatam. As soon as the mention of Radharani's name comes up, and he's like, okay, now continue. And there's so much that I don't even know if it could be openly said, but Ramananda Roy ultimately said that it cannot even be compared to Krishna. He's fine. Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, the source of all incarnations and the possessor of all opulence. The very name Krishna indicates that he is all attractive one. He's saying all this. And still Mahaprabhu is not satisfied until he hears about glorification of Radharani. And it gets to a very, very deep and personal note, which I don't think I'm qualified to even read from. So I will stop here. But my essential point of reading all these things was that everything is there here in ISKCON, and Gaur Govind Maharaj talks about it. Everything is here. One doesn't have to look for in other sampradayas or speakers the sweetness. But it is also a very safe place here that makes sure that one doesn't get lost in the wishy-washy tone of what all these uttama or advanced stages of devotion or bhava may look like. So one is able to firmly establish their consciousness first in the servitude nature of jiva, of themselves, to Krishna first, so that we have a firm footing so we can leap farther. Just like you're trying to make a jump, you have to have a firm footing. If you're not standing firmly, you'll try to make a jump, you'll only cross an inch or a foot maybe, depending on. But if you have a firm footing, you can really leap. So with that note, I'd like to end this. Thank you so much for paying attention. We can leave for breakfast. If anyone has any questions, then you can ask me and I may not answer. Hare Krishna.